Many species measure their lifespans on the amount of time it takes for their home planet to complete a full revolution around the primary star in their solar system. While it tends to vary greatly between species, none but my own have measured theirs in the revolutions of their home system around the galactic center. With a species so long-lived, it was unsurprisingly fitting that we became the galactic caretakers and archivists of anything and everything. Even more so that we were used to seeing the growth, expansion, and inevitable death of so many. One of my species would consider me to be quite young compared to the rest, but I alone have witnessed countless forms of life being caught in all variations of the Great Filter. Raken-Shield hive minds met their end when their war shattered the last inhabitable planet in their system. They grew quickly, but it was that speed which became their downfall. The Banalran expanded their territory much slower but did not develop in time to escape their expanding star before it consumed them. I discovered humanity after they had begun to experiment with faster-than-light travel. They had grown fast and were loud in their expansion, so much so that there would be only one filter to come challenge them. I eventually reached out, offering knowledge, and sought theirs. They had a thirst for the unknown, much like I did when I was younger. I needed to warn them of what was to come. They initially listened, but it did not last. That great filter eventually came, one that I had only seen 4 times in the 70 years I had been alive. Countless more had been recorded by my predecessors, but each time came the same result. Vast multitudes of worlds were burnt away as humanity was obliterated. Again and again they asked what they could do to save themselves, and we gave only one answer: heed our warnings. It was the last message we sent to every species that didn't listen to us, and the messages eventually stopped as humanity was wiped out. They would become the next example to the new species that were discovered and eventually warned. But before I could update their status to filtered, I received a request for knowledge. I thought it was an error, something received too late, or an automated system left behind. I chose to ignore it and move on, only to receive another and another. They somehow survived the thorough cleansing of the Great Filter, the first ever to do so. They grew again, faster than they had before, but were much quieter, all the while seeking information from my archives. I was intrigued and obliged. I shared everything they asked for, and in turn they shared as much as I gave, even correcting some errors that I had never found. Some requests went so far as to ask about the Great Filter that they had somehow escaped, but we knew nothing, yet they continued to ask. Soon enough they asked about the other species that had met that fate. I eventually had to turn to my siblings to help them find what they wanted to know. We watched and waited, hoping that humanity had learned to stay hidden, to not expand far enough to be caught in the Great Filter again, but they were too cunning. The galaxy grew quiet again for a time until they sent what I would have believed to be their final message: "Thank you." What followed behind it was an explosion of activity unlike anything my species had observed. The humans had expanded to inhabit the entire Orion Spur and a large portion of the Perseus Arm. This beacon was sent as an invitation, a challenge, for the Great Filter to try again. Billions of species across the galaxy watched as the fringes of dark space erupted in the fires of millions of supernovae. But the Great Filter continued to advance, this time faster than it had before. We watched as nearly a quarter of the galaxy burned. We watched for the first time as the Great Filter's advance slowed. Then the messages came. At first it was broken images and mostly corrupt data, shadows and brief silhouettes taken in retreat. Soon enough, photos became clearer, now paired with descriptions. They were followed by brief recordings barely managing motion. All the while, the humans had further slowed the Great Filter's advance. Data began to come in droves. Massive and elaborate recordings, scientific breakdowns, chemical makeups, full blueprints, battle tactics. Humanity had begun to categorize them in the same way they categorize a species, and they were sharing everything they learned. They fought, they died, they learned, they adapted. The Great Filter we had all grown to fear burned away all that they could. But it was not enough, as its advance was eventually halted completely. The Elkathoran were the first to send their ships, loaded to near bursting with refined metals sent to aid the humans in their fight. Humanity in turn shared their knowledge in planet cracking and asteroid mining, and the eager Elcathoran began their work clearing out uninhabited star systems and sweeping up massive nebula to fuel the humans' war machine as the galaxy's largest arm grew smaller. The Pilthwallen followed suit, sharing their refined energy production as they connected the humans to their web of galactic power plants. Again, humanity shared what they learned as they taught of their Dyson spheres and Tesla pylons, and the vibrant Pilthwallen lit the darkened battlefields as the galaxy's brightest arm grew dimmer. With each gift, the humans grew and returned in kind, sharing and uplifting, all the while holding the great filter at bay. No one could have expected it to last as long as it did, until the day their beacon came. The same two words echoed out, translated into every language I had ever archived, even some that I had not yet learned of. Only this time it was not a challenge. It was to signal their attack. Humanity had not been simply holding their enemy at bay. They were waiting, preparing, growing stronger. Their ferocity and cunning put even the great filter's own advance to shame as they were overtaken by the tidal wave of all their strengths, fueled by the embrace of an entire galaxy. For the first time, I felt an emotion that had been so effectively struck from me: hope for our future. Not long after these events, I was visited by a human envoy, a ship so massive it altered the orbit of a moon that I had carefully cultivated. It had been one of thousands sent with a simple mission, a gift of thanks to all of those that lent their support in humanity's fight against the Great Filter, one they would continue for as long as it took. They gave me a ball of intricately spun glass that took the form of their home planet. Before the humans left, I had to know why. Why fight so hard against the very forces of nature? Their reply was a single word, one that I have failed to accurately translate in the 2 years it has been since I first learned of it: spite.